Welcome back inside number 9. We are now travelling into the second half of Series 8 of Steve Pemberton and Reece Shearsmith's anthology show. According to the men themselves, this particular episode went through a lot of alterations to keep people from guessing where it heads. Was the effort worth it? There will be spoilers ahead, so you have been warned, but if you're ready, let's talk about Series 8, Episode 4, Love is a Stranger. The premise of this one was rather intriguing. We have a woman named Vicky trying to find her perfect fella via online dating, but the news is talking about a Lonely Hearts serial killer at large. Which one of the peculiar men she talks to is going to turn out to be the killer? It's her, isn't it? Yep. Yes, it is. Personally, I had the gut reaction that Vicky was going to be the Lonely Hearts killer within only a couple of lines exchanged between her and Matthew Horn. One of several great guest appearances in this episode, by the way. Now, Steve and Reece have openly spoken about how number 9 has an expectancy from the audience about delivering great twists, and living up to that expectation is difficult. However, they don't write for a particular audience. They write for themselves in the knowledge that even if a portion of the audience susses out the twist in advance, that there is still enough in the episode to keep them entertained. This description fits Love is a Stranger perfectly for me. Yes, admittedly, I called Vicky as the killer within only a few minutes, but the core strength of this episode isn't about the twist, it's about the content of the themes and dialogue. Before I get into that though, I will address why I think this twist wasn't a shock to me. What does a good twist do? It takes everything you've seen and dramatically reverses a key part of it in order to blow your mind by recontextualizing everything you've seen. In the case of this episode, the general concept put in your mind is that Vicky is a really lovely woman trying to find her match on a webcam-based dating site. You're told as soon as the episode starts that there's a Lonely Hearts killer. The episode presents Vicky and the audience with multiple people on the other end of a webcam, all of them with something a bit off about them to some degree. It wants you to play detective of which of these suspects is going to wind up being the killer. So with that in mind, what's the most obvious twist? The reversal of this scenario, that the killer isn't on the screen, they're in front of the screen. The literal opposite side of the screen to the one it wants you to focus on. Plus, with the exception of the saleswoman played by Frances Barber, all of the people on the webcam are men. It plays into the idea of men being powerful, being killers, especially when it comes to sexually fueled crimes like luring in women to kill them off. Again, the most obvious reversal of that is putting the power not in the hands of the men, but of the woman. It's the femme fatale trope we see here. I think that a tactic that could have been used here to provide a bit more ambiguity could have been to make Vicky interested in both men and women, a dating site tailored around bisexuality, because then it could have added extra intrigue of the killer could be a man or a woman. However, as it stood, making you imagine a male killer made me reverse it into being a female killer. And once I had that idea in my head, the hints in the dialogue just kept leaping out at me. Now, don't get me wrong, not all of them came to fruition, but they still were on that same path of Vicky is the killer. She says that gardening is one of her passions, to which I thought that could be along the lines of burying the remains of her victims. She says that she likes cooking as another of her interests, which to me made me think of a potential cannibal angle. Not one that is ever mentioned or confirmed from memory, but with the dismembered fingers in the jars at the end of the episode, she could be preserving them for consumption. Later, Vicky says that she's had some big life-changing stuff going on, which I thought was literally life-changing by ending lives. A pivotal scene is where she says she lost her mother a year ago and that untethered her and made her lose her bearings, to me hinting towards unleashing herself and making her go out of control. She's flipped a switch, and in terms of that switch flipping, Vicky is belittled so much throughout the episode by those on the other end. She's presented as such a lovely, fluffy, kind-spirited person, and in this situation, the victim. But then when the saleswoman gets her riled up because of her tactics, Vicky completely snaps. Here, she shows the signs that she has it in her to be fierce and rageful, flipping that switch. To me, this was Vicky breaking cover into her true self, rather than snapping out of her true self. There's even a hint at a motivation as to why Vicky would be doing what she's doing, through the backstory of her parents, where she says that her father left her mother when she was little. So there's a seed planted of Vicky could very well have something against men and want to get revenge because of what happened in regards to her father. So overall, I think throughout the episode, there were enough little snippets of the script which just connected with me after having the initial twist idea in my head. There have been several times in previous number 9 episodes where I've been sent down those paths of obviousness, only to have the rug swept from under my feet. And with how highly Steve and Reese spoke about this one in advance, I thought that was going to be the same case. I thought Vicky being the killer was the path of obviousness, and that they'd think outside the box to provide something completely left field. However, for me, that wasn't achieved, and that could perhaps be a detriment of my own experience hearing them big up this episode before I'd seen it. However, everything about the twist doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy Love is a Stranger, because it's so much more to me than a twist episode. If you genuinely didn't see it coming, I can imagine this being a barnstormer of a moment, and that this episode will stick with you as a firm favourite. However, my main takes from this one come from anything but the twist or the Lonely Hearts Killer element. The actual narrative framework of the dating site is really clever, and means that you can have multiple guest appearances done super easily and cost effectively. Steve and Reese said they'd sat on the idea for this episode for a little while, so I wonder if the threads to this one were put together during COVID, because this has a COVID TV show setup written all over it. By the way, all of the supporting characters here were excellent. Matthew Horn was funny and quirky, Reese was great as one of his old man characters, Steve was his lovely jovial self with a peppering of the sinister, Frances Barber's surprise appearance and her reasons for being there were brilliant, and to top it off, Asim Chowdhury, otherwise known as Chabuddy G, was fantastic as Jai. He's a whopper of a dramatic actor and supremely underrated in that field, probably because he's seen quite generally as being more of a comedic actor. However, for me, I'm gonna throw a big opinion in here, and I'd love to chat about it some more in the comments. In the history of number 9, Steve won a BAFTA for his performance in Bernie Clifton's dressing room. One character in one episode, and he got a prestigious award for it. And so far in the show's history, Steve is the only performer to achieve such an award, though Reese was nominated in 2021. I'd go as far to say here that Claire Rushbrook is quite possibly the most outstanding guest performance I've seen in Inside Number 9. Some come close, like Sheridan Smith in The 12 Days of Christine, Nicola Walker in To Have and to Hold, and who could forget Julian Glover's casual racism in Last Night of the Proms. But seriously, what a world-class performance from Rushbrook here. Serial killer plot aside, the conveyor belt of emotions she utilises commands the screen. There are so many beautiful, nuanced scenes with her talking about herself, what she wants out of this experience. A lot of it covers what people face on these kinds of sites. They can be brutal, and conceptually they compress such an important part of life into such a short window of opportunity. It's like looking at a shelf in a shop wondering which chocolate bar you fancy. But it's not, it's people. Real people with real problems, real aspirations, real desires, but presented in such an unreal way. Even the guests have gorgeous little moments too, like Reese talking about his memories of being a boy and spending time with his late mother, Jai masking his disfigurement with an emoji filter because he fears rejection and he lacks confidence because of it. People want to be loved, but for many people they're either not noticed or they're rejected at first glance, and the hollowness and loneliness that is able to create is such a vast void. The beauty of Love is a Stranger Stranger, to me, comes from the strength of its performances and its little moments. Not the serial killer subplot, not the big twist at the end, but in the relatability and honesty of the discussions had on either side of that screen. It taps into such a broad spectrum of people and is an emotional battleground fought with nothing more than words and appearances. That is the reason I'd want to come back to this episode. My initial reaction was one of disappointment because I was just so focused on the twist side of things, but the more I've thought about it, and then going back to Steve and Reese's point about hoping that if a twist is predictable, it doesn't damage the overall experience, that now is my exact conclusion of Love is a Stranger. But what did you think? Let me know in the comments below any of your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree with anything I've said. And while you're down there, if you haven't already, we are en route to hitting 35,000 subs on the channel, so one little click away will greatly help us out. There'd be a few less lonely hearts on this side of the screen anyway. Join me next week when I'll be covering Hold On Tight Inside Number 9.